These are the 12 worst One Piece villains, and today I'll be sentencing them for their crimes. We're gonna list characters from only a couple of years in prison, all the way to the last character who will spend over 600 years behind bars. For example, 𝗕𝗲𝗄𝐴 used to be a notorious pirate, but surprisingly, he didn't really commit a significant number of crimes. During his limited time on screen, Oda pretty much only showed us Moria committing petty theft and robbing graves. Besides that, we can assume Moria killed a couple of people off screen, but we don't really have any evidence of that, so I'll just put a single murder charge on him, although it's undoubtedly more. We could also try to convict him for stealing people's shadows, but I don't think there's a charge for that in the real world, so with all of his sentences combined, Moria would get locked up in the slammer for a grand total of 22 years. Number 11. Buggy. Since Buggy has enjoyed a ton of screen time over the years, both in the manga and the anime, we can pin a lot of crimes on him. Firstly, he has definitely killed quite a few people during his life as a pirate, especially considering how he was willing to throw bombs on places like Orange Town. Not only that, but Cross Guild, the crew he is a captain of, is responsible for putting bounties on people's heads, which undoubtedly led to quite a few deaths. He's also threatened people with violence in order to get his way, which can be classified as extortion. And we can't forget that Buggy was one of the main individuals responsible for the Impel Down breakout. All of this, combined with a few abductions and robberies, will earn Buggy a total prison sentence of 192 years. 2 villains done, still 10 left to go. And you won't believe what some of these characters did. Let's continue with Arlong. Arlong is probably a character with the least screen time out of any other villain on this list, but that didn't stop him from committing some of the worst crimes in the series. Fueled by his hatred for humans, Arlong illegally occupied and took over Kokoyashi village. He then enslaved the local population and ruled with an iron fist by basically extorting and blackmailing everyone. He also forced Nami to work on his crew when she was only a little kid, which is obviously child abuse. However, one thing he has done that no other character so far has is bribing government officials so they wouldn't interfere with his actions. We also can't forget that he killed many people in Kokoyashi village. However, the only one we have proof of is Belmir, who he shot personally. Among his minor crimes, we can also count theft when he stole Nami's money, and we can also pin damage to private property on him. All of this comes to about 235 years in prison. Number 9. Blackbeard. Blackbeard may be the big final villain of One Piece, but surprisingly, he's considerably more innocent than many other One Piece villains. The most obvious crime he has committed is murdering his crewmate, Thatch. For some time after that, we don't know much about what he did until he decided to basically break into a prison and help dangerous criminals escape. This single event is going to earn him 3 charges. First, trespassing on government property. Second, assisting a prisoner in escaping. And the last one, harboring a fugitive, which pretty much means that he protects former prisoners and doesn't allow Marines to take them in. Later during the Marineford, he killed Whitebeard in front of literally everyone, which earned him another murder charge. During the time skip, he spent a lot of time spreading terror throughout 4 Blues and conquered a lot of Whitebeard's former territories. Although we don't know exactly what he did, this whole operation can be considered terrorism. I mean, just imagine the total chaos he caused during this time. But this might not even be the worst thing he has done. You see, after the time skip, he tried to abduct 800 Marine soldiers to use them as slaves and also steal their warship. Even though he didn't go through with it, he still ended up kidnapping Kobe, which is going to earn him both attempted kidnapping and kidnapping charges. All of this, coupled with a few petty thefts and property damage, means Blackbeard will likely face 254 years and 6 months in prison for his crimes. Man, I definitely expected Blackbeard to be placed way higher on this list, but it turns out that the 8 remaining characters are so much worse than him, and one of them is Orochi. One Piece is a series in which many islands are ruled by tyrannical dictators, but none can stand up to the kind of scum Orochi is. Although he is probably the weakest character on this list, he managed to pull off some crimes that would leave other One Piece villains in the dust. The first few years he spent as shogun were filled with slander and propaganda against the Kozukis. He conspired to overthrow Sukiyaki's regime and even managed to poison the monarch before taking his place. After becoming shogun, Orochi enslaved the entire population of Wano in order to help Kaido create weapons. And if that wasn't bad enough, Orochi also intentionally created a food shortage that wound up starving the local population. In addition to using an entire nation as slaves, Orochi also used the people of Wano as hostages when talking to Oden and even threatened to kill them. And Lastly, Orochi is guilty of rewriting history and spreading propaganda across the youth of Wano. He tried his best to fool the local population into accepting his unlawful authority. For these crimes, Orochi deserves a 265-year-long sentence. Number 7, Enel. Although Enel spent most of his life far away from the watchful eyes of the Marines, his crimes would have surely landed him in the Impel Down had he ever been caught on the mainland. To kick things off, he assumed control of the Sky Island by pure force, and even created an army to spread terror in his name. His devil fruit ability allowed him to, essentially, nuke entire cities out of existence. Although we don't know how many times exactly he used this ability, he definitely used it enough to earn a terrorism charge. After becoming Skypia's god, he silenced everyone who raised any questions about his rule, and before he was defeated, nobody dared to say anything bad about him for fear of being killed. So we'll just slap on some threat and abuse of power charges for this. Another interesting charge Enel will get is invasion of privacy, for always listening to people within his domain using haki. It's not that serious of a charge considering everything else, but we need to get this guy with everything we can. So all of that comes to around 346 years that Enel will spend in prison for his egregious crimes. Number 6, Big Mom. You may be surprised to see Big Mom so low on the list, but considering how her goal was for all races to live together, it would make sense that it stopped her from committing some more serious crimes. Anyway, let's start with when she was a kid and had one of her hunger pangs, which ended with her murdering one of the giants. Although murder is obviously a crime, due to her being a child and unable to control herself, it's likely that she'd managed to avoid any jail time. When she grew up, Big Mom used her power to force several countries into making candy for her in exchange for protection. This is clearly extortion. But an even worse thing she has done is kidnapped men from various countries and forced them to marry her. We don't know how many times she's done this, but she did it at least once with Pound. However, this is nothing compared to some of the other stuff she did, like, for example, using humans as slaves and keeping people hostage. She did that to Sanji by threatening to kill Zeph if he didn't do everything she wanted. Like every big pirate, Big Mom likely killed many people, but we only have proof of 2 killings. The first is Zeppo, the captain of Nox pirates, who she killed after they tried to steal her poneglyph. And the second one is her own son, Moscato, who she killed during one of her hunger pangs. In addition to this, Big Mom also attempted to murder the entire Vinsmoke family in order to take their technology, which is gonna earn her a couple of attempted murder charges. All of this, combined with some petty theft charges, is going to earn Big Mom a whopping 396 years in prison. Pretty good, considering everything she's done. There are only 5 more villains left to cover, and all of these characters committed some of the most despicable crimes in the entire series. Number 5, Hody Jones. You thought Arlong was a bad guy? Well, turns out he was actually a pretty kind fishman compared to Hody Jones. To kickstart his criminal life, Hody actually murdered the queen because he didn't like her politics, basically. And afterward, he also framed someone else for the assassination. During the next few years, Hody recruited a bunch of fishmen to his side and pretty much created an army for himself. Although this isn't technically illegal, he did have some human slaves in his army, which is considered human trafficking. During this time, Hody also stole dangerous weapons from the royal armory and equipped his troops with them. Once his army became powerful enough, he tried to take control of the Fishman Island and forcefully remove King Neptune. It's clear Hody was ready to sacrifice the entire population in order to fulfill his goals, which he showed by planning to have the entire ship Noah fall on Fishman Island and essentially destroy it. He pretty much endangered the island's entire population with this stunt, which is going to earn him a terrorism charge as well. In the end, Hody is one of those characters who acts evil just for the sake of being evil. A cartoonish villain like him more than deserves the 410-year prison sentence he's going to get. Number 4, Crocodile. Although the people of Alabasta thought Crocodile was their hero, he was far from it, and he was actually planning to take over the entire kingdom. And you bet he committed a ton of crimes along the way. Firstly, Crocodile created an artificial drought within the country, which led to the deaths of countless people due to thirst and starvation. Not only that, but he framed Alabasta's king for it. This can be considered as either terrorism or crimes against humanity. Crocodile didn't stop there though, because he then started spreading propaganda in order to kickstart a civil war that would take the lives of many more. Oh, and let's not forget that he planted a huge bomb in Alabasta that almost destroyed the entire country. He was arrested soon after, and even though many villains would call it a day right there, 𝐲𝐲𝐴 didn't, and actually broke out of prison. Since then, he became one of the leaders of the Cross Guild, which is a pirate crew that puts bounties on Marines' heads. With this, 𝐲𝐲𝐴 will get a charge for incentivizing violence as well, which would bring his total to exactly 478 years behind bars. Number 3, Caesar Clown. Although Caesar won't spend as much time in prison as the last two characters on the list, the crimes he committed may actually be the most evil. Before the main story, while he was working with Vegapunk, he intentionally set off a dangerous weapon that destroyed 2 laboratories and left many prisoners permanently disfigured. I'll categorize this as damage to government property and the use of a weapon of mass destruction. But Caesar was just getting started. You see, a couple of years after this incident, he started creating artificial devil fruits and illegally trafficking them for Kaido and Doflamingo. However, possibly the worst thing he has done is abducting children from various islands and experimenting on them. This is going to earn him quite a few different charges. In the end, the kids got treatment and survived, so I guess he avoided some murder charges. Anyway, as if participating in kidnapping and trafficking of children wasn't bad enough, Caesar was also actively developing biochemical weapons that he planned to sell on the black market. His greatest creation was a poisonous slime creature that almost poisoned the entirety of Punk Hazard. This, along with some counterfeiting and theft, will put Caesar in jail for a total of 499 years and 6 months to think about his actions. Before we cover the absolute worst villain in One Piece, who would be spending the most time behind bars, let's first quickly cover the second worst, the world's strongest creature, Kaido. At only 10 years old, Kaido was one of his kingdom's greatest fighters and was tasked with attacking and looting other villages. Later on, during his life as a pirate, he was captured by the Marines a total of 17 times, but managed to escape each time. Since breaking out of prison is illegal, this is gonna earn him 17 prison escape charges. He then worked with Orochi in order to forcefully take over Wano while Oden was away, which worked perfectly for him. But Kaido was nowhere close to being done, because as soon as he took over the country, he started quickly expanding his criminal empire. He first hired Doflamingo to develop artificial devil fruits for him and also do some illegal weapon trafficking. He then also commissioned people to create mass destruction weapons for him, including chemical weapons developed by Caesar, and of course, same as other evil pirates, he kept quite a few slaves, mostly consisting of people he had defeated in the past. Once he cemented himself as Wano's new ruler, he started spreading suffering throughout the entire region. Under his regime, the citizens suffered from food shortages and were basically forced to survive on polluted resources meant to keep them weak and sickly. To make matters worse, he personally tried to murder a kid and physically abused them, which is pretty messed up, even for him. A couple more things we can pin on him are large-scale infrastructure damage for destroying many cities during his raids, and propaganda for trying to justify his rule. For his despicable actions, the fake Joy Boy earned himself a hefty 686 years in prison. Number 1, Doflamingo. Surprising to no one, Don Quixote Doflamingo is easily the worst villain featured on this list, and in One Piece so far. He has single-handedly committed enough crimes to put most real-world war criminals to shame. He committed his first crime when he was only 10 years old by killing his own father out of hatred. Anyway, later in his life, he decided to cut off the food supply of celestial dragons so he could blackmail them into making him a warlord of the sea. Now, although celestial dragons more than deserved what Doflamingo did to them, it's still a crime, so Doflamingo will get some extortion charges. Anyways, he later stepped up his criminal game a notch and decided to forcefully take over the entire country. He did this by manipulating King Riku's body and making him commit various atrocities against his own people. Oh, and we can't forget that he killed his own brother too. This guy really has some family issues. Interestingly, the people of Dressrosa lived a somewhat normal life under Doflamingo, which makes him better than Kaido and Orochi, right? Well, not really, because although he didn't enslave citizens, he did enslave the entire race of dwarves and force them to work in factories non-stop. Once he sensed that his end was near, he activated his birdcage ability, which was meant to kill every single person on the island. This fortunately didn't happen because he was stopped by the Straw Hats, but the fact that he even attempted to do something like this is enough to put him away for a long time. So, with all of this combined, how long do you think Dofu would be spending in prison? Well, the answer is a grand total of 690 37 years, more than any other villain in the One Piece world. But here's a crazy question. Did you ever wonder what would have happened if Luffy was actually raised by Doflamingo? Click on this video next to find out. It's absolutely crazy.